It never begins in silence, and it never begins small. When a toxic person enters with the weapon of love bombing, they do not arrive like a stranger to be known slowly, step by cautious step. They arrive like a tempest. The storm of affection begins with a sudden downpour of words, gestures, and intensity so overwhelming that the victim feels swept away before they even realize a wind has started blowing. You find yourself drenched in attention, messages that arrive the moment you open your eyes, calls that last late into the night, gestures so grand they would take others months or years to even consider. They tell you things about yourself that you did not dare hope anyone would ever notice. They elevate every small detail into something sacred, treating your existence as though it is the rarest gift the universe has produced. And your brain, hungry for recognition, hungry for meaning, reacts exactly as it was designed to. It rewards you with dopamine, oxytocin, endorphins, the natural drugs of connection. Your nervous system translates their attention into safety. Your ego interprets their words as truth. Your soul begins to whisper that perhaps you were right to wait, right to hope, right to believe in impossible love. The danger is that it does not feel like danger at all. It feels like destiny. It feels like finally being seen after years of invisibility. It feels like stepping out of drought and into rainfall so heavy you cannot tell whether you are breathing water or air. The affection is intoxicating precisely because it does not seem measured, human, or real. It seems divine. That illusion is the trick. Because when something feels divine, we do not question it. We kneel before it. We surrender. And surrender, in the beginning, feels like relief. You stop guarding yourself. You stop asking cautious questions. You stop scanning for red flags. You let the flood carry you. The storm is not chaotic by accident. It is crafted, calculated, and maintained with precision. Every text, every call, every declaration of eternal connection is timed to strike before silence can become suspicious, before the natural rhythm of doubt can awaken in your mind. In ordinary human interaction, silence exists like breath, a pause that allows reflection, a space where both people can process what is unfolding. But in love bombing, silence is suffocated. The toxic person knows instinctively that if they pause long enough, your rationality may return, and rationality is the one enemy of their design. So they fill the void relentlessly. When you wake, a message is waiting. When you drift to sleep, their voice is the last you hear. When you glance at your phone, they are already there, as though they exist for no reason other than to orbit your world. And because human beings are wired for connection, this consistency is mistaken for commitment. It feels safe. It feels like loyalty. But what is really happening is enclosure. A cage is being built around your perception, a cage constructed from constant attention that leaves no space for air. They mirror your thoughts back to you, reflect your values, adopt your preferences with uncanny accuracy. If you mention a fear, they immediately soothe it. If you reveal a dream, they promise to make it real. It feels supernatural, as if two lives have collided in cosmic alignment. And in that sensation, your defenses weaken. You stop asking whether it is reasonable for a person to claim they know your soul after mere days. You stop asking whether anyone can authentically adore everything about you without question or hesitation. You stop asking whether perfection itself is the greatest mask of all. For when the illusion of destiny is created, logic is silenced. And who among us dares to dissect what feels like a miracle? No one. But the cruel genius of the storm lies not only in its power to overwhelm. It lies in its ability to alter your very sense of what is normal. Before the flood, you lived in a world where affection was measured, where people revealed themselves slowly, where love took time to prove its roots. But once you are swallowed by the intensity of love bombing, that old world feels inadequate. Ordinary attention begins to feel like neglect, ordinary affection like distance, ordinary silence like abandonment. The toxic person knows this. They are not merely showering you with love. They are recalibrating your hunger. They are raising the bar so unnaturally high that anything less than their flood feels like starvation. And because human beings adapt to extremes faster than we realize, you grow accustomed to the unnatural. You begin to expect messages every hour, constant affirmations, endless declarations of your worth. Without them, you feel anxious, restless, incomplete. And in this anxiety, dependency is born. They have not only given you affection, they have made you addicted to it. The very thing that once felt like a gift has become a chain binding you to their presence. You begin to crave not the person themselves, but the feeling they manufacture within you. And like any addict, you stop asking whether the substance is good for you. You only care that it continues to flow. This is the hidden cruelty. The storm of affection is not designed to last forever. It is designed to create withdrawal. Because once withdrawal begins, you will chase the flood with desperation, bargaining, self-blame, and submission. The toxic person does not have to demand control. They only have to offer you less than what they once gave. You will do the rest. You will cling to the memory of the storm, comparing every drop of affection to the tidal wave that came before, convincing yourself that if you try harder, behave better, prove your worth, the flood will return. The storm of affection does not exist for its own sake. It exists to prepare you for the next stage, the exquisite, dangerous intoxication of being chosen. Few things in human psychology rival the power of exclusivity. To feel that out of all the billions of people in the world, someone has looked into the depths of your being and decided you are the singular soul worth worshiping. This is not just attention, it is elevation. You are not simply loved, you are exalted. The toxic person knows this, and they weave the illusion with mastery. They do not just shower you with affection, they whisper of destiny. They frame the connection not as accident, but as inevitability, as though the universe itself conspired to bring you together. Suddenly, your life feels scripted, your ordinary days transformed into chapters of a great story, a story in which you are no longer anonymous but the central character. And in this story, they are the only one who truly sees you. They position themselves as the rare soul capable of understanding what others missed, of cherishing what others overlooked, of valuing what others dismissed. And because you crave this recognition, because you long to believe that someone finally notices what the world ignored, you accept the script. You step into the role they have crafted for you. You are the chosen one. And in that moment, you are high. The chemicals of attachment surge, the ego expands, the hunger to preserve this feeling grows stronger than reason itself. But beneath this intoxication lies a cruel truth. When someone tells you that you are chosen, they are not giving you power, they are taking it. For if they are the one who grants you the crown, they are also the one who can strip it away. And what feels like elevation today will become the source of tomorrow's fear. The feeling of being chosen is not gentle. It is addictive, like a drug injected straight into the bloodstream. Each word, each gesture, each declaration that you are unlike anyone else is a dose. and the body begins to crave the next before the first has even settled. You tell yourself it is love, but deep down it feels closer to obsession, because obsession does not let you breathe. When they say, "I have never felt this way before," your mind does not ask whether it is too soon to know whether such intensity could possibly be real. Instead, you surrender to the ecstasy of uniqueness. The toxic person crafts this illusion with meticulous care. They study what makes you insecure and what makes you glow. Then they focus their affection where you are most vulnerable. They might say, "No one has ever understood your depth like I do." And you believe them because you have longed to be seen. They might whisper, "You are everything I ever searched for." And you cling to those words because they sound like a promise. But every promise is a hook, and every hook has a chain. The high of being chosen is meant to elevate you so far above the ground that you forget how to walk without their arms around you. You stop questioning their intensity because you do not want the story to end. You stop asking if the pedestal they have placed you on is real, because even if it is an illusion, you do not want to lose it. And in this suspension, in this fog of euphoria, something subtle begins to shift. Your standards change. What once seemed excessive now feels natural. What once seemed overwhelming now feels deserved. And soon, you are no longer evaluating whether this person is right for you. You are clinging to the idea that you must be right for them, that you must not do anything to fall from the throne of being their chosen one. This is where the sweetest trick deepens, because the more exalted you feel, the more terrified you become of exile. The tragedy of being chosen is that it feels like freedom while it is quietly building your cage. You think you have discovered liberation, a love so powerful that it rescues you from loneliness, from doubt, from the gray emptiness of ordinary days. But in reality, you are being trained. Each grand word, each exaggerated promise, each moment where they convince you that you alone are worthy is not proof of your value. It is proof of their strategy. Because to make someone feel chosen is to make them afraid of being unchosen. And fear, not love, becomes the hidden tether. It begins subtly. You worry that if you say the wrong thing, the warmth might fade. You hesitate to set boundaries, in case boundaries make you seem less perfect, less unique. You allow things you would never have allowed before, because the risk of losing this so-called destiny feels greater than the cost of compromise. You cling harder, you adapt faster, you erase small pieces of yourself to protect the role you have been assigned. You do not see that the very act of protecting this illusion is what cements your submission. This is the sweet trick at its peak. The one who crowned you as extraordinary can, at any moment, remind you that crowns can be taken back. And so you live in quiet terror, smiling as though you are blessed while trembling at the thought of banishment. The high of being chosen blinds you to this contradiction. You tell yourself it is worth it. You tell yourself that even if there are cracks, the feeling of being cherished so absolutely is too rare to let go. But rare things are often dangerous. Rare things are often weapons dressed as wonders. Love bombing does not enslave you with chains of steel. It enslaves you with the crown it places on your head. And by the time you realize that the crown is heavy, that it digs into your skin, that it was never made of gold but of sharpened iron, it is already too late. You are not just addicted to being loved. Perfection has always been one of the most dangerous illusions in human history. It whispers promises of certainty in a world built on uncertainty. It paints flawless images in a reality scarred by imperfection, and it seduces us because we long to believe that somewhere, somehow, there exists something untouched by flaw. In the dance of toxic love, this illusion is not just present, it is weaponized. After the storm of affection and the exaltation of being chosen, the next act begins, the unveiling of a self that appears impossibly perfect. The toxic person does not simply present who they are. They present who you most want them to be. They mirror your dreams, your values, your wounds. They echo back the parts of yourself that you've kept hidden from the world, convincing you that they too hold the same secrets, the same battles, the same longings. And because this reflection feels so personal, so tailored, you mistake it for intimacy when it is actually strategy. They construct a mask so seamless, so convincing, that you cannot tell it apart from authenticity. Every laugh feels genuine. Every story feels vulnerable. Every look feels drenched in understanding. They make you feel as though you have found the one person who finally fits, the missing piece in a puzzle you have been trying to solve your whole life. And because the mask is flawless, you do not see it as a mask. You see it as destiny taking form. But the truth is darker. Masks are always designed for performance. They are built to conceal, to manipulate, to control the gaze of the one looking. And in this theater of false perfection, you are not the audience. You are the target. The perfection you are being sold is not proof of their depth, but proof of their hunger. For only someone desperate for control feels the need to craft themselves into a flawless idol. The brilliance of the mask lies not only in its beauty, but in its adaptability. It is never fixed, never rigid. It shifts, bends, and reshapes itself depending on what you reveal, like water poured into the mold of your desires. If you value kindness, they exaggerate gentleness. If you hunger for ambition, they display unstoppable drive. If you confess your fears, they paint themselves as the antidote. You begin to believe you have found not just a partner, but a mirror soul, someone who not only understands you but embodies everything you ever hoped for. But this is not discovery, this is design. They are not revealing themselves, they are constructing themselves in your image, tailoring their mask to the blueprint of your heart. And the more you believe in the perfection they show, the more blind you become to the imperfections they hide. Love bombing works not only because of excess affection, but because of flawless imitation. We all hunger for recognition, for the feeling that someone truly sees us. But when that recognition arrives too perfectly, too completely, it is not recognition at all. It is mimicry. And mimicry is the most deceptive weapon of all, because it convinces you that you are safe, that you have finally been understood without judgment. What you fail to notice is that the very act of imitation is a form of theft. They are stealing your identity to construct the mask they wear. Every intimate confession you make becomes material. Every vulnerable truth you share becomes ammunition. You are not falling in love with a person. You are falling in love with a reflection, one designed to bind you more tightly than any chain could. And because the mask appears flawless, you ignore the natural truth that no human being is without cracks. You dismiss small inconsistencies, you rationalize doubts, you silence the quiet voice in your mind that says, "This is too good, too fast, and too perfect." Perfection is not meant to be trusted, but when it is handed to you wrapped in devotion, it feels impossible to refuse. The mask they wear is not only a disguise for their flaws, but a prison for your reason. Every day you spend inside this illusion deepens the trance. You become less capable of questioning, less able to doubt, and more invested in preserving the dream that has been offered to you. To question the mask would mean questioning your own judgment, your own heart, and that is a burden few are willing to carry. So you silence suspicion in order to protect the fantasy. The irony is cruel. The more you believe in the perfection they display, the less you believe in yourself. Because somewhere, buried deep in your subconscious, you know no human being can truly be flawless. Yet instead of rejecting the lie, you begin to reshape your own sense of reality to accommodate it. You convince yourself that perhaps they really are different. Perhaps you were wrong to expect imperfection. Perhaps this is the once-in-a-lifetime miracle people dream about, but rarely find. And in that act of self-deception, the mask tightens its hold on you. It is not only their performance that keeps you bound, but your own need to protect the story you have already accepted. The mask of perfection becomes a shared secret between you and the illusion. They play the part, and you defend it against the evidence of truth. In this way, the trap is sealed not by force, but by complicity. You hand them the power willingly, believing it is love, while they smile behind the mask knowing that every day you sink deeper into their design. This is why love bombing is so devastating. It does not simply seduce you with kindness. It convinces you that the impossible is real. And once you accept the impossible, you will endure anything to preserve it. The flood of affection always carries a hidden undertow, and this is where the design of love bombing reveals its cruelest intention. At first, the attention feels like freedom, as though someone has finally unchained you from the cold indifference of the world and lifted you into a space where you are cherished without question. But beneath that flood lies a hook, carefully buried in sweetness, waiting for the moment when your heart is too entangled to escape. Dependency is not born through force, but through gradual seduction. Every compliment, every gesture, every grand promise is not just a gift. It is a thread, weaving itself into the fabric of your emotions, until your sense of worth feels inseparable from their presence. You begin to measure your happiness by the rhythm of their words, your peace by the warmth of their gaze, your self-belief by the certainty of their approval. This is how the trap tightens, not with visible chains, but with invisible cords of need. And yet, because those cords are spun from moments of joy, you do not resist them. You welcome them. You celebrate them. You believe them to be proof of love. What you do not see is that these moments are crafted not merely to make you happy, but to make you dependent. The brilliance of the trick lies in its subtlety. They give you so much that you forget what life felt like before them. And when you forget, you surrender. You begin to shape your choices not around your values, but around their presence. You adjust your moods to fit their approval. You silence your doubts to protect the supply of affection. In this way, dependency does not arrive as a cage you can see, but as a home you believe you chose. And yet, a home built on illusion is no home at all. It is a stage set, a carefully constructed theater where your role is scripted long before you realize you are acting. The cruelty of dependency is that it disguises itself as intimacy. When someone floods you with devotion, when they listen with intensity, when they shape their entire presence around your needs, you believe it to be the highest form of connection. But intimacy is built slowly, with truth, with imperfection, with time. Dependency, by contrast, is manufactured quickly, with precision, with strategy, with the deliberate blurring of boundaries. The difference is invisible when you are inside it. You feel as if you have found someone who makes the world less heavy, who fills the empty spaces you thought could never be healed. And in the glow of that belief, you lower your guard. You begin to forget that strength once meant standing on your own. You forget that resilience once came from your ability to endure storms alone. Now, every moment of silence from them feels unbearable, every absence sharp as withdrawal, every cold glance like starvation. This is how the hook is sharpened, by teaching you to equate their presence with survival itself. They do not need to command you to obey. Your own hunger makes obedience inevitable. In this way, love bombing transforms from sweetness into scarcity, from excess into control. The very thing that made you feel chosen now becomes the weapon that makes you feel replaceable. They know that once dependency has been established, they no longer need to give you everything. They only need to give you enough to keep the craving alive. A single kind word after hours of silence becomes addictive. A fleeting smile after a night of distance feels like salvation. A small gesture of affection after days of neglect feels monumental. The hook has done its work. You no longer seek balance. You chase crumbs. You justify their coldness. You excuse their distance. You forgive their cruelty, because the memory of the flood keeps you desperate for the trickle. The tragedy of dependency is not only that it binds you to another, but that it erodes the self you once knew. Before the flood of affection, you were whole, even in your loneliness, even in your imperfections. But once the hook is lodged inside, you begin to measure your existence not by who you are, but by how much of their light falls on you. It is a slow corrosion, so subtle you rarely see it happening. You give up small pieces of yourself, hobbies, friendships, ambitions, not because they demand it outright, but because maintaining the bond feels more important. You adjust your laughter to match theirs, your silence to soothe them, your choices to avoid their disappointment. Soon, the person staring back at you in the mirror is no longer independent, no longer certain, no longer alive in the same way. What remains is a shadow stitched together from longing and fear. And when you realize how fragile you have become, it is often too late, because dependency convinces you that you cannot survive without the one who weakened you. This is the cruel paradox. The more you rely on them, the more powerless you feel, and the more powerless you feel, the more you rely on them. It is a spiral with no natural end. They no longer need to shower you with constant affection. They know the memory of what once was will keep you begging for what is no longer freely given. This is how the sweetness becomes poison. The very thing that made you feel alive now keeps you captive. The affection that once built you up now ensures you stay small. And the dream that once felt like salvation now feels like an addiction you cannot escape. Dependency is not just a hook in the heart. It is a rewriting of the soul. You become willing to betray yourself to preserve the bond, willing to deny your own pain for the promise of their approval, willing to forget that love should never feel like submission. The cruelty of the performance is that it was never designed to last forever. The flood of affection was not love, it was bait, and like all bait, it was meant to lure you close enough for the trap to snap shut. Once dependency has been carved into you, once you have been shaped to crave their approval like oxygen, the sweetness that once drowned you is pulled away. Not all at once, but piece by piece, so that the absence becomes as powerful as the flood once was. This is the beginning of the withdrawal game. It works because your nervous system has been trained to equate their touch, their attention, their validation with safety itself. When that source is cut off, even briefly, it doesn't just feel like loss, it feels like danger. Your body aches, your thoughts spiral, your sense of balance crumbles. You remember the intensity of their early affection and tell yourself, if I just hold on a little longer, if I just try a little harder, that version of them will return. And so you chase, harder than ever before. You forgive betrayals. You overlook indifference. You beg with your silence and plead with your patience. You think of it as loyalty, but it is hunger. And the person who once flooded you with warmth knows this. They no longer need to overwhelm you with affection. They only need to withdraw it, carefully, strategically, to keep you spinning in place. Each absence becomes a test. Each moment of coldness becomes a measure of how much you are willing to endure. And you endure, because the memory of the flood blinds you to the drought. What makes this game so devastating is that it convinces you that the problem is not their cruelty, but your insufficiency. You believe you must have done something wrong, that your love was not enough, that if you could only be more patient, more forgiving, more perfect, they would return to the dream they once showed you. What makes this stage so insidious is that the silence itself becomes a form of communication. You begin to live in the pauses between their words, in the hours where they do not call, in the days when their gaze feels colder than ice. And in that silence, your imagination becomes their most powerful accomplice. You replay every moment, every conversation, searching for clues. You dissect your own actions, wondering which word, which glance, which failure caused the warmth to vanish. You begin to believe the absence is your fault, when in truth, the absence is the weapon. They know that a starving heart will feed on anything, even scraps. So when the cold finally breaks, when they give you a small smile after days of distance, when they offer a touch after weeks of indifference, when they whisper one kind phrase after hours of silence, it feels monumental. Your brain floods with relief, your chest loosens, your pulse steadies. You call it reconciliation, but it is reinforcement. They have trained you like a captive animal. Starve, then feed, starve, then feed, until you no longer notice the cage. This is the game, not to give you nothing, but to give you just enough to keep you desperate. And because the contrast between famine and feast is so sharp, the smallest gestures feel enormous. A single glance feels like proof of love. A single word feels like salvation. And so you cling tighter, beg harder, surrender more completely, all while believing you are fighting to preserve something sacred. What you do not see is that the sacred thing you chase no longer exists. It was a performance, a mask, a flood that was never meant to last. The withdrawal game does not test whether you love them. It tests how much of yourself you are willing to lose in order to keep them. And each time you endure, each time you forgive, each time you excuse, you prove that the hook has done its work. You no longer stand as yourself. The final cruelty of this stage is not the loss of their affection, but the reshaping of your reality. By now, the game has conditioned you to equate their presence with peace and their absence with torment. You begin to live on a knife's edge, never knowing when the warmth will return or when the cold will descend again. This uncertainty keeps you restless, hypervigilant, constantly scanning for signs, desperate to anticipate the next shift in mood. You think of it as love's unpredictability, but it is deliberate chaos. The storm is not random. It is engineered to keep you chasing shelter in the very place that created the storm. And the longer you remain inside this cycle, the more distorted your sense of truth becomes. You stop trusting your instincts, dismiss your doubts, silence your pain, because every time you dared to question, they reminded you of the flood. Remember how much I loved you. Remember what we had. Remember what I gave you. These echoes become your chains. You stay not because you are happy, but because you are terrified of losing the only source of relief you have known. even if it is the same hand that delivers the pain. This is the twisted genius of the withdrawal game. It convinces you that survival lies in holding tighter to the very person who is draining you. You become addicted to the cycle, mistaking unpredictability for passion, mistaking starvation for sacrifice, mistaking torment for love. And by the time you recognize the truth, that the game was never about love, but about power, you are already too entangled to walk away easily. Your own mind betrays you, whispering that perhaps the flood will return if you endure just a little longer. And so, even as you wither, even as your sense of self collapses, you cling to the memory of sweetness, blind to the poison it has become. Every performance eventually cracks, and even the most carefully crafted illusion cannot endure forever. What once tasted like salvation begins to reveal its bitter aftertaste, and you are left staring at the truth you had long tried to ignore. Sweetness can be poison when it is laced with control. In the beginning, the affection felt pure, untainted, overflowing like water after drought. You told yourself you had been rescued, chosen, delivered into something rare. But slowly, as the tide of adoration receded, the ground beneath you hardened into something far less forgiving. The warmth was not love, it was allure. The endless attention was not devotion, it was a leash. And the person you believed to be your greatest source of comfort reveals themselves as the architect of your dependency. The revelation does not arrive in a single moment, but in fragments, in the way their smile no longer feels safe, in the way their silence cuts deeper than absence should, in the way your own reflection looks more like a ghost than a self. This is when you begin to realize that the very sweetness that drew you in has been working against you all along. It was never nourishment, it was intoxication. You were not being fed, you were being conditioned. Every "I love you," every embrace, every grand gesture was not just an expression of affection, but a calculated dose, designed to bind your body, your mind, your soul. Now, stripped of illusions, you stand face to face with the poison itself. It is not hidden anymore, not wrapped in roses or whispered promises. It is clear, sharp, undeniable. And yet, even as you see it, you feel the pull of its sweetness, the craving for what nearly destroyed you. That is the power of this trick. Even once revealed, the poison still tempts, still calls, still convinces you to drink again. What makes the poison so dangerous is not its bitterness, but its sweetness. If cruelty arrived naked, if control came with iron chains and harsh commands, you would resist. You would see the threat, recognize the enemy, and defend yourself. But when control is hidden inside tenderness, when domination is delivered through kisses and promises, the mind does not resist, it surrenders. That is why the revelation feels like betrayal at the deepest level. You are not only mourning the loss of what you believed was love, you are mourning your own blindness, the fact that you let yourself be consumed by something that was designed to consume you. The sweetness was never free. It was a transaction, though you didn't know you were paying the price. Every smile cost you independence. Every embrace cost you a piece of your voice. Every promise drained your ability to trust yourself. And when the poison finally shows its true nature, you realize that what you thought was the greatest intimacy was actually the most refined form of control. The devastation is doubled because the very thing you clung to for safety is revealed as the weapon that harmed you. It feels like discovering that the cure was the disease all along. And even then, even with the mask fallen, the craving lingers. That is the genius of the trick. It rewires your nervous system to equate poison with pleasure, chains with safety, submission with love. You may see the truth clearly now, but clarity does not break the craving. You still long for the warmth, still ache for the flood, still dream of the days when the illusion wrapped around you like a blanket. This is how the poison lingers in your veins, not because it is still being poured, but because it has taught you to miss it even when it is gone. The sweetness carved scars into your sense of love itself, leaving you unable to separate care from control, intimacy from manipulation, passion from imprisonment. The final cruelty of this poison is that even once it is revealed, escape does not come easily. You may see the mask fall, you may understand the pattern, you may even name it for what it is: manipulation, control, deceit, and yet the grip remains. Not because the poison is still being poured into you, but because it has already seeped into the deepest parts of your being. It has altered the way you think about love, the way you understand intimacy, the way you measure your worth. You stand at a crossroads, torn between the truth you now know and the memory you still crave. Part of you wants to run, to sever the cords, to reclaim what remains of yourself. But another part whispers that perhaps, just perhaps, the sweetness could return, that the poison could somehow transform back into nourishment. This is the lingering effect of the trick. It does not merely wound you. It teaches you to wound yourself by chasing what was never real. And so, the struggle becomes not only with them, but with your own mind, your own heart, your own desperate longing for the dream. The revelation is not freedom in itself. It is only the opening of a door. To step through requires a kind of death, the death of the fantasy, the death of the self that believed in it, the death of the illusion you clung to even as it hollowed you out. It is painful, it is brutal, it feels like loss beyond measure. But in truth, it is the only way the poison loses its hold. For when sweetness is revealed as venom, there are only two choices: drink again and remain enslaved, or turn away and endure the emptiness until your body remembers how to live without it. That emptiness feels unbearable, but it is not death. It is the silence in which rebirth can begin. And only in that silence can you discover that real love was never meant to intoxicate you, never meant to enslave you, never meant to strip you of yourself. Real love is not a trick, not a game, not a poison.